Hi students, welcome back. Coming to our next subject, that is object oriented programming language. So this is one of the important programming language which is very helpful to you to develop a software programs. So if you want to write any software programs in object oriented, you have to know the basic concepts that are used in the object oriented programming language. If you know the concepts how to write the program, then it will be easy for you to implement the software. Okay, so whatever the programming languages you have taken, based on your requirement, you can select the different types of programming languages. Okay, so programming language allows programmers to mainly develop software. Okay, so the programming languages, it mainly allows programmers to develop softwares. So programmers or who are implementing the software. So these programming languages or allows programmers to develop software. There are mainly three major families in the language. The three major families of language. So whatever the language, the programming language you have taken, mainly there are three major families in the programming language. So one is the machine language. Okay, one is the machine language and another is assembly language. Next is high level language. So these are the three major families of languages. So whatever the programming language, that will be having those are of different types: machine language or assembly language or high level language. So machine language means all the language that should be in the forms of zeros and ones. Only the CPU can understand this language. The processor, CPU is nothing but the processor. The processor can understand this machine language. Whereas the assembly language in the form of mnemonics. Okay, so add, sub, move, like that. Okay, so this assembly language is always in the form of mnemonics. It will be next stage to the machine level language. Okay, now coming to the high level language. High level language is it's just English type language. Here the syntax is similar to English. Historically, actually this high level language is divided into procedural language, high level language is divided into procedural level language and the object oriented programming language. So now we understood that object oriented programming language is one of the high level language. So this high level language may be the procedural language or the object oriented programming language. So let us see the difference. What is this procedural language? Okay, what is this procedural language? Earlier, high level language or typically called as procedural language. So all the high level languages whatever present earlierly, those we call it as a procedural language. So examples: C, COBOL, Fortran, HTML. So everything, these are the procedural languages. Now coming to the object oriented programming language. So what is this object oriented programming language? Actually this is focus of OOPS language is not only on the this object-oriented programming language is not only focused on structures, but it is mainly on modeling the data. Okay, so it is an approach, object-oriented programming. It is an approach to develop software programming. So nowadays everyone is preferring to work on object oriented programming. In earlier dates, everyone is preferred procedural language. After that they introduced the object oriented programming language. So this is mainly it is an approach to develop all the software programmings. It is mainly based on the modeling of the data items. Okay, so examples for this is C++, .NET, Java. So these are all comes under this object oriented programming language. Actually this is trying to simulate the real life things into your programming. So the main object oriented programming is trying to simulate real life things. So whatever the real life things that are there into your programming. So everything is focused on the real life things, whatever we are using, real life objects. So it's object oriented programming is focused on the real life things. So nowadays everyone is preferring to work on object oriented programming language rather than the procedural languages. So actually OOPS was introduced to overcome the flaws in the procedural approach of programming. So whatever the disadvantages that in the procedural language, that here in OOPS they are overcome. So to overcome this, we will go for the object oriented programming language. So what are those approaches this OOPS is following to overcome the procedural language? So OOP was introduced to overcome flaws, means the drawbacks in the procedural approach to programming. So procedural approach to programming such as, so what are those? Reusability and maintainability. So because of these main reasons, reusability and maintainability, we are preferring the object oriented programming rather than the procedural approach. So in the procedural approach, you are not supposed to use there is no option for the reusability, and the maintainability is also difficult in procedural approach. Whereas in object oriented programming language, you can have the facility like reusability and maintainability. So the main fundamental idea behind the OOP language, object oriented language, you all said object oriented language, is to combine into a single unit with both data and functions that operate on the data. Okay, so data and functions that operate on that data, such as such a unit, you call it as object. So what it means? Actually, the main fundamental idea behind the object language is to combine all the functions or structures into a single unit. So that single unit consisting of the data and functions. Okay, in the procedural language, you are having it is just like a sequence of programming. You're just declaring the statements, after that you're calling the functions, after that again you're calling the functions, and you're doing that. Okay, so there is no chance for the reusability and maintainability. Whereas in object oriented programming, the main idea in this object oriented language is to combine all the data into a single unit. Means all the data and functions are hiding in a combining, and they are operated on that data. Such unit you call it as an object. So in that particular object, you are having the data and functions, and whenever you call, you can call the data and functions. Okay, you can reuse in the program whenever you need it. So that is the main fundamental idea behind the object oriented programming. It's combining all the statements or the variables or data and functions into a single unit. Okay, and operated on the data. Okay, it is such as you call it as object. Now coming to the benefits of this, what are they? Benefits of object oriented programming. So why we are using this object oriented programming? Let us see the benefits. Okay, so the first benefit is it can easily upgrade from small systems to large system, from small system to larger systems. So if you are having anything on the, if your code is it's just simply a small system, you can upgrade it to a large system. That facility will be provided in the object oriented programming. And the next benefits, it can easy to partition, work for same program. So if you're having a program, the same program, that program can be partitioned and you can work separately. Later then you can combine or you can integrate that work. That facility will be provided in the object oriented programming. So next benefit, it's having the facility like message passing technique. Message passing technique that makes communication easier. Okay, so with the help of this message passing technique, the communication becomes easier in the object oriented programming language. Okay, next coming to another benefit in the OOPS. So that is the software complexity. The software complexity can be easy managed. So whatever the software that we use in, that software complexity can be managed in the object oriented programming easily. Okay, and next is the maintenance cost. Maintenance cost is less. So whatever the maintenance cost that is there in the object oriented programming, that will be easy and it is very less when compared to the other procedural languages or other languages. And then it is simply to implement also, simple to implementation. So here we are using just a simple English type languages. Okay, and everything will be inherited or encapsulated, so it is very simple to implement object oriented programming language. So these are the different benefits. Thank you.